Landlording. If done right, you can control about 80% of the experience. I'm Curtis Mulberg, and that's what we'll cover in this episode of An American Entrepreneur. All right, welcome back. Here recently, I bought a new rental property, and it was from a guy that's a landlord, and he was a fed-up landlord. He was getting rid of all of his properties. And I thought I would ask him, why are you've just had enough and you're getting out of landlording? And this guy just started citing me all of these reasons. And as I was listening to him, I'm thinking, if he was doing it right, he wouldn't have all these issues. He went about it wrong, and little did he know, and it's really sad, but had he known some strategies he could initiate, he could have avoided these problems. And these problems fall, I think, in two broad categories. The first category is the property you buy, and the second is the tenants. So I know it may seem very intuitive and common sense, but I see people make this mistake a lot, in that they'll go out and buy an old property and expect not to have problems. And if you buy an old property, it's no different than buying an old car. I mean, if you buy an old used car, you've got to expect to have problems. And I prefer C properties. These are older properties, and you're going to have some problems, but I know that going into it. But a strategy I have when I buy these properties is, and I learned this from an old timer, he told me that you have to stabilize your property, in that when you go in, and if it's got an old refrigerator, an old dishwasher, an old stove, and an old water heater, just replace them. I mean, don't wait for them to go out, because it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. And when you buy a property and it's vacant, it's so much easier to do all of these changes before you have a tenant in there. And what I've also learned is, sure, I go buy brand new appliances when they're old. I'll buy a brand new dishwasher. But I'll go to Lowe's, Home Depot, or Best Buy, and you can find these units that have a scratch on the front of them or a small dent on them. Those are the ones you want to buy, because, and I used to buy the brand spanking new appliances, but tenants always inevitably, they'll put their own scratches on them. They'll put their own dents on them. So, I'll buy them like that. I'll save several $100s on a refrigerator that has a dent or a scratch. So it's not as expensive as you may think. And it's really proven to me that it really does pay off to stabilize your properties. Just do a really good inspection, and these new appliances, everything you've done should last a number of years. But if you go in there and just, have the attitude of, well, that works and this works, and hell, I'll get a tenant in there, well, of course you're going to have these problems. So stabilize your property, but be smart about it, and you'll have a lot less problems. All right, the second issue I mentioned, or the second category, is your tenants. You've got to really screen them well, in that I look at everything. I don't have a formula, but obviously the credit score. I look at what they bring home every month, and I require that they have to bring home at least double what the rent is. I look at how long they've been on their job. I look at the occupation, and I do not rent to any convicted felons. Just my personal policy. I'm not going there. And I will say that don't let anyone tell you that, well, I make more money, I make cash. I clean office buildings on weekends and I get cash. Don't fall for it. Trust me, I fell for it before. If they cannot prove what they make, then just don't believe it. Also, regarding tenants, it is your business what they do for a living. I had a girl call once, and I asked her what is her occupation, and she said adult entertainment. When I asked her, maybe it was a dumb question, but I said, could you be more specific? And she said, I don't think that's any of your business. Well, needless to say, I didn't even bother showing her my property. But another thing I've learned is the worst tenants I've ever had, believe it or not, were the ones that left my place completely trashed. You can expect to have tenants come and go that get behind on their rent and they just skip on you. And it's just part of the game. The tenants that are really trying are the ones that leave your place completely trashed. Over the years, I don't know why, it just hit me, but I figured out a way to circumvent these tenants that live totally nasty and that'll leave your place like a pig pen. And this is what I do. I wait for them outside. I'm always at my property before them. So when they pull up, I walk up to their car to greet them. And I casually look inside their car. And if their car is a pig pen inside, well, they're not going to rent from me. Because if their car looks like a pig pen, I assure you their house will look like a pig pen. Now, I did have one guy completely fool me. His car was immaculate. It was perfect. It was a really nice looking solid black Honda Accord. And his car was extremely clean. But he left my place like a pig pen. Well, later I found out the reason why his car was so clean was because he drove for Uber nights and weekends. So he fooled me. But generally speaking, if their car's a pig pen inside, they're going to live like a pig pen inside your unit. So when I look at my experiences, I really do believe that if you do it right, you can control 80% of the experience. Don't get impatient when you have a property that's vacant. Don't just, well, I don't really like this person, but I'm going on 2 or 3 months and I've got to get somebody in there. I've got to get some income flowing. I've learned it just doesn't pay off. Be patient, wait for the right tenant. So when I think back about that landlord that was selling his properties, there was so much that he could have done. There's so many ways that he could have avoided these headaches had he really had a strategy about eliminating these problems. I hope these few minutes added value. If so, please hit the like, share, and subscribe button. I'm Curtis Mohlberg, and I'll see you again soon on another episode of An American Entrepreneur.